The doors slide open, and the first thing the building gives you is a feeling of surplus. The produce is bright and stacked in sloping rows. The bakery smells warm. There is a display near the entrance built around whatever the country is currently buying. Charcoal in May, backpacks in August, canned pumpkin in October, sparkling cider in December. Nothing in the room appears to be in a hurry. The lights are steady. The carts roll slowly. There is music somewhere in the ceiling that nobody could identify afterward. A shopper stands in front of 2 jars of pasta sauce for a full minute, comparing them, as though the store has all the time in the world. The store does not have all the time in the world. It is a building full of clocks, and almost every one of them is running. The bread has one measured in days, the yogurt in weeks, the canned soup in years. The rotisserie chicken in the hot case has a clock that started when it came out of the oven and will expire long before the chicken becomes unsafe, because a chicken that has sat too long stops looking like something anyone wants. The promotion ends Sunday. The pallet on the receiving dock is warming up. The shelf tag is wrong until somebody changes it. The snowstorm is 4 counties away and moving. And every one of these clocks is being managed simultaneously by people you will not see, in a room engineered to feel like nothing is happening at all. That calm is the product. It is not a byproduct of the store working well. It is the thing the store is manufacturing. Look at what you personally did on your last grocery trip. You walked into a warehouse and located roughly 30 items among tens of thousands, using a filing system nobody taught you. You judged the ripeness of produce. You compared unit prices. You transported everything through the building yourself, in a vehicle the store provided. You unloaded it onto a belt, or increasingly, you identified each item to a machine, weighed the loose ones, entered a numeric code for the onions, packed your own bags, and paid without speaking to anyone. Then you pushed the goods across a parking lot, loaded them into your own car, and drove them home. A century ago, essentially all of that was somebody's job. You would have handed a list to a clerk, and the clerk would have walked the shelves. The customer's contribution was the list and the money. What happened in between is the actual story of the American supermarket, and it is not mainly a story about refrigeration or trucks or scale. It is a story about a building that has spent 110 years handing its own work across the counter to the person it serves, and successfully presenting each transfer as an improvement. Self-service, the cart, the barcode, the self-checkout lane, the app that replaced the coupon you used to cut out. Every one of these was sold as convenience, and every one of them was also a job that moved from an employee to you. This is not a swindle. Most of those transfers genuinely did make shopping better, and they are the reason a person. But it does mean the modern grocery store is best understood not as a place that sells you food, but as a place that has gotten remarkably good at getting you to do the work of buying it. What is the one thing you always end up buying that was never on the list? Leave your answer in the comments. The first transfer has an address: 79 Jefferson Street, Memphis, Tennessee. Clarence Saunders had spent years selling to grocers and had grown irritated watching them operate. Every store employed what one account of the period called a small army of clerks. Each one required to walk the shelves for every customer, weigh things out, wrap them, and total them by hand. Those clerks were the single largest. On the 6th of September 1916, he opened a store called Piggly Wiggly, and within weeks, he had filed a patent application for what he called a self-serving store. The design was far more controlling than anything we would recognize today. You entered through a turnstile so that only paying customers got in and nobody could leave the way they came. You took a basket, and then you followed a single one-way path that zigzagged through the aisles and required you to walk past every product in the store before you could reach the checking station at the end. Strictly cash. No credit accounts. No delivery. Saunders was very clear about why the aisles were shaped that way. He had noticed that when customers saw more, they bought more. The clerk had been an obstacle without anyone. Once the shelves were open and the path was fixed, the store could put 10,000 suggestions between you and the register, and it turned out that people will pick things up. The old grocer fulfilled a request, the new aisle created a want, and the want was invented in Memphis in 1916, on purpose, by a man who understood exactly what he was doing. There was a second consequence Saunders did not have to design. Once products sat on an open shelf beside their competitors, with no clerk to speak for them, the package had to do the selling by itself. Color started to matter. Typography started to matter. Brand names started to matter enormously. The entire discipline of consumer packaging exists because a man in Tennessee removed the person who used to explain things. By 1922, there were around 1,200 Piggly Wigglies. Sylvan Goldman ran the Humpty Dumpty and Standard Food Market chains in Oklahoma City, and he had noticed something about his own customers that his competitors apparently had not. Shoppers did not stop buying when they were finished choosing. They stopped when their arms got tired. The handbasket was setting the size of every purchase in his stores, and it was setting it low. In the middle of the Depression and the Dust Bowl, with a mechanic friend, Goldman put wire baskets on a folding chair frame, put wheels on the legs, and gave it a name only a patent attorney could love: a folding basket carriage for self-service stores. He unveiled it on the 4th of June, 1937, with a newspaper advertisement asking readers to imagine moving through a food market without a cumbersome bag. Women compared it to a pram. One reportedly told him she was done pushing her last baby carriage. Older shoppers did not want to look frail. The invention that would eventually define the industry sat in the front of the store being ignored. So Goldman hired actors. A young man, a middle-aged woman, an older gentleman. People paid simply to push carts around the aisles and shop like anyone else, while a greeter at the door explained the device to arriving customers. It was an unusually sophisticated piece of social engineering for a grocer in 1937. He had correctly diagnosed that the obstacle was not the machine but the embarrassment, and that embarrassment dissolves the moment the behavior looks normal. Within weeks, the resistance collapsed. He received his patent in April of 1940. Today, a single manufacturer in Wagoner. And notice what the cart actually did, because it is not what the advertisement said. It did not reduce your effort. You still push the weight, you just push it instead of carrying it. What it removed was a limit. A basket asks what you are able to carry. A cart asks how much you would like to take home, and it keeps asking, quietly, for the entire trip. Everything downstream came from that. Larger stores, weekly stock-up trips instead of daily ones, the suburban parking lot, the warehouse club, and the very American habit of buying dinner and paper towels and batteries and shampoo in one motion. A half-full cart still reads as barely anything, even when the contents already cost more than you meant to spend. The most influential machine in the building has no motor. A conventional supermarket carries somewhere north of 30,000 distinct items in a building of 40,000 odd square feet, which means shelf space is permanently scarce and every inch has to justify itself. The vocabulary is precise. A facing is how many packages of a product are visible at the front of the shelf. More facings make an item look more important and let more units sit there before the display starts to look picked over. A planogram is the diagram that dictates exactly where each product goes and how much space it gets. The shelf converted into a surveyed map. And the good positions are not distributed by accident. Eye level is easier to see. End caps catch nearly everyone who walks. Manufacturers compete for that space with money and with terms. Fees, promotional support, free displays, guaranteed volumes. Store brands are frequently placed directly beside the national brand precisely to invite the comparison, because the retailer's own label carries a much better margin than the branded product beside it. None of this is a conspiracy against shoppers. It is simply what happens when a finite surface has to earn a return and 30,000 candidates want to stand on it. But there is an important corrective here, because the folklore about supermarket layout has gotten out of hand. Yes, the milk is usually at the back. No, that is not purely a trick to march you past the cookies. Dairy sits along the rear wall because the meat department is on the perimeter because it needs drains, sanitation, and a cutting room. The bakery is where it is because it needs ovens, ventilation, and water. The layout of a supermarket is a sales strategy and a plumbing diagram at the same time. And when the two disagree, the plumbing usually wins. The third transfer did not look like a transfer at all. It looked like a pack of chewing gum. The night before, staff at a Marsh supermarket in Troy, Ohio, had gone through the store by hand, putting printed labels on hundreds of items, while technicians from National Cash Register installed scanners and a computer. At 8:01 the following morning, a small crowd watched Clyde Dawson, Marsh's head of research and development, reach into a cart, pull out a 10-pack of Wrigley's juice. It was the first time in the world that a universal product code had been scanned to sell something. The idea was 25 years old by then. In 1949, an inventor named Joe Woodland, thinking about Morse code, had drawn the first version of it with his fingers in the sand on Miami Beach. Dots and dashes stretched out into thick and thin lines, arranged at first in a bullseye. The concept worked, and the technology did not exist yet. It took lasers and cheap computing to catch up. The standard symbol was approved in 1973, and Troy was chosen for the debut largely because it was an ordinary American grocery store close to NCR in Dayton. The public was not delighted. Shoppers pointed out correctly that a code readable only by a machine meant a number of people concluded the lines were the mark of the beast from the Book of Revelation. Adoption was slow, and by the end of the decade, only a modest share of stores had scanners. It took the mass merchandisers to make it universal. But the barcode's real effect was not speed at the checkout. It was that the store acquired a memory. Before, a manager knew what had been ordered and could look at a shelf and estimate what had gone. After, every single sale became a time-stamped record. This item, at this price, at this register, under this promotion, at 6:42 on a Tuesday. Ordering, pricing, shelf space, promotions, and the balance of power between retailers and manufacturers all reorganized themselves around that data within a generation. The beep is so familiar now that it registers as noise. Attach a loyalty account to the transaction, and the record stops being about products and starts being about a household. The store can then see that this household buys cat litter every 3 weeks, switches to the private label when the branded coffee goes above a certain price, buys more snacks in the fall, stopped buying a cereal entirely in March, and shops on Sunday evenings unless the weather is bad. That is a genuinely useful thing for a retailer to know. It improves forecasting, which reduces both empty shelves and waste, and it is also the reason the weekly circular that once went to every mailbox has become a personalized set of offers in an app. The store moved from mass advertising toward individual prediction without changing anything a shopper can see. And the exchange is real on both sides. Human shopping remains gloriously incoherent. People buy kale and ice cream in the same trip. They write a list and abandon it in aisle 2. They compare unit prices for 5 minutes and then spend $20 on flowers because the flowers looked good. They arrive hungry. No model handles that cleanly. The data describes tendencies, not people. But here is the part that almost never gets said in the argument about grocery data, and it is the reason the whole system is worth having. When a product is recalled, a contaminated ingredient, an undeclared allergen, a lot number with a problem. The store has to identify which items are affected, pull them from every shelf in every location, block them at the register so they physically cannot be sold. The barcode, the inventory record, the supplier data, and yes, the loyalty account are what allow a national food system to reach backward into 1 million kitchens within hours. The store's memory is commercial and protective at the same time, and you cannot really have one without the other. Here is the number that makes everything else in the store make sense, and almost nobody outside the industry knows it. Grocery retail runs on one of the thinnest net margins in American business. Industry figures from the Food Industry Association put average net profit at about 1.6% in 2023, 1.7% in 2024, and around 2.1% in 2025. And in that last year, roughly 11%. After the cost of goods, wages, rent, electricity, refrigeration, card processing, insurance, maintenance, taxes, and waste, it keeps on the order of 12 or 14,000 of it. Sit with that ratio for a moment, because it explains behavior that otherwise looks petty. 2% means the entire annual profit of a store can be erased by a bad quarter of spoilage, one prolonged equipment failure, or a competitor opening 2 miles away. It means a full parking lot proves nothing. This is why busy, beloved, obviously popular grocery stores close, and why customers are always baffled when they do. Sales are not profit. At 2%, the business is not really selling food. It is executing an enormous number of small transactions with enough precision. A shelf tag that does not match the register becomes a refund, an apology, and in some states, a regulatory problem. A refrigerated door left ajar becomes energy. Refrigeration alone can account for something like 40% of a store's electricity, and electricity is a fixed cost against a 2% margin. One small error is nothing. The same small error repeated 10,000 times a week is the whole business. Which brings us to the most underestimated labor in the building, the price. A typical grocery store may change something on the order of 7,000 shelf tags in a single week. Promotions start and end. Digital offers activate. Now imagine the physical work hidden inside that figure. Somebody prints the tags, sorts them by aisle, walks the store, pulls the old label, matches the new one to the right product, checks that the unit price is right, and does not put the tag for the 12-ounce under the 18-ounce. Across a large chain, millions of small paper labels a week. Electronic shelf labels are spreading through the industry largely because of this, and they change the mechanism without removing the requirement for accuracy. And price is doing something more interesting than covering cost. It is the store's main steering wheel. Certain items, milk, eggs, bananas, the rotisserie chicken, the holiday turkey. Shoppers cannot price check 30,000 items, so they check 4 or 5 that they buy constantly, and they extrapolate. The store knows exactly which items those are. It prices them as a statement and earns the money back on the coffee, the cereal, the paper goods, and the private label beside the brand. Promotions cut in both directions, which is why they are stressful rather than fun. Under order, and the shelf is empty on Saturday morning, the advertised deal becomes a broken promise, and the customer who drove there specifically for it feels tricked. Over order, and the back room fills with product that stops selling the moment the price returns to normal. Somewhere between those two failures, a person is trying to predict, 3 weeks in advance. A forecast of snow in the Northeast moves milk, bread, eggs, bottled water, batteries, and soup. An approaching hurricane on the Gulf empties water, canned goods, propane, diapers, and pet food, often while the same storm is delaying the trucks that would restock them. A heat wave sells ice and cold drinks. A big game sells wings and chips and frozen pizza. Thanksgiving produces a national wave of turkey, butter, flour, and cranberries with a hard deadline. And then the peculiar Wednesday afternoon phenomenon of people discovering that a frozen turkey does not thaw in 4 hours. Runs on a product have their own physics. The shelf that looked permanent at noon can be bare by 6, and the sight of the empty space is itself the accelerant. Shoppers who see a gap. Nothing about this is irrational at the individual level, and all of it is destabilizing in aggregate. The store's options are limited and unglamorous. Impose a purchase limit, substitute, pull stock from a sister location, or wait for the truck. So the full shelf is not merely storage. It is a claim, renewed every morning, that somebody understood what this particular neighborhood was going to want before the neighborhood knew it, and got the physical objects into the room in time. Most days that claim is true and completely invisible. The one day it fails is the day everyone notices the shelf exists. Every store carries a permanent discrepancy between what its system believes it has and what is actually on the premises. The industry word for it is shrink, and it is one of the few genuine enemies of a 2% margin. A truck arrives 1 pallet short and nobody catches it. A product gets stocked behind the wrong label and effectively disappears because no employee can find something that is not where the system says it is. A cashier keys the wrong produce code. A customer at a self-checkout genuinely believes they scanned the bottom of the cart. And a great deal of it is simply time. Food that was fine on Tuesday and is not sellable on Friday. That last category is larger than most shoppers imagine. Department of Agriculture research has estimated average supermarket loss rates above 11% across dozens of fresh vegetables, with enormous variation by item. Leafy greens fail fast, potatoes barely at all. And here the store is caught in a trap of its own construction. Shoppers want visual perfection. A display that has been picked down to the last few items reads as failure even when every remaining vegetable is perfectly good. So the store keeps the display full, which means more product is exposed to handling and temperature and time than will ever be sold. And a meaningful share of the waste in an American grocery store is not carelessness at all. It is the price of maintaining the appearance of plenty, which is the thing customers said they wanted. And then, somewhere in the last 30 years, the supermarket also became a restaurant and inherited every problem restaurants have. The rotisserie chicken is the emblem. It is hot, it is a whole meal, it is priced low enough to feel like an error in your favor, and it pulls people through the door in the late afternoon. Too few, and there's an empty hot case at 6 p.m., which is precisely when the people who came for it arrive. Too many, and the store is holding cooked chicken it cannot sell tomorrow. The same arithmetic governs the donuts in the morning, the fried chicken in the afternoon, the sushi at lunch, the cut fruit, the deli sandwiches, and the decorated cakes that exist because somebody's birthday is on Saturday. Prepared food made the store far more useful and considerably harder to run. A grocery aisle needs stocking and rotation. A kitchen needs cooking, holding temperatures, sanitation logs, health inspections, trained staff, and a demand curve that changes with the weather and the school calendar. The supermarket added a second business inside the first one, put it behind a pharmacy, a bank branch, flowers, coffee, a clinic, fuel points, package lockers. Roughly a quarter of what food retailers sell is not food at all. Cleaning supplies, pet products, paper goods, health and beauty items, batteries, seasonal decorations, the small hardware of running a household. The logic is straightforward. People postpone buying furniture and clothes, but they do not postpone eating. Once the trip is already happening every week, the store can attach almost anything to it. There is a sentence people say in supermarkets that carries more feeling than it has any right to. They stopped carrying it. Behind that sentence is a routine process with an unromantic name: category management. Shelf space is fixed. Gluten-free becomes a category rather than a shelf. Protein migrates into cereal, snacks, water, and dessert. Energy drinks take territory from soda. A recipe circulates online, and a specific brand of chili crisp disappears nationwide for 6 weeks. Every one of those arrivals has to displace something, because the building does not get bigger. So a product with slow but steady sales, the one you have bought for 20 years, is cut in a planogram reset by someone who has never been in your store, and the first you learn of it is an empty slot with a different item in it. The customer experiences a small domestic grief. The store experiences a spreadsheet decision it makes several hundred times a year. Both readings are correct, and neither party can see the other one. A conventional supermarket carries north of 30,000 items and treats breadth as the service. A limited assortment chain like Aldi carries a small fraction of that and treats the editing as the service. Fewer decisions, lower cost, mostly private label. A warehouse club narrows the selection further and enlarges the package. A specialty grocer curates hard and asks you to trust its taste rather than compare. A supercenter attaches groceries to everything else a household buys. Each of these is a different bet about what shoppers find exhausting, and all of them are currently profitable somewhere in America, which suggests nobody has actually solved it. What all the formats share is that regular customers do not experience a store as a catalog. They experience it as a memorized map. You know where the coffee is. A remodel, even a genuinely good one, makes loyal shoppers feel briefly stupid in a building they have used for a decade, which is why chains agonize over resets. The store wants you to discover things. It very much does not want you to get lost. Here is the operational fact that separates a supermarket from nearly every other industrial building in the country. A factory can stop the line. A warehouse can close the aisle. A supermarket has to perform all of its maintenance in front of the customers while they are standing in it. A jar of sauce hits the floor near the end of aisle 7 and the sound carries the length of the store, and within about 90 seconds, somebody has to protect the area, keep a toddler out of broken glass, remove the product, clean a floor that is now a slip hazard and a liability question, check whether anything adjacent got contaminated, and reopen the space, while apologizing to the person whose shoe got splashed. For the shopper, it is a mildly interesting interruption. For the store, it is safety, labor, waste, and legal exposure compressed into 5 minutes, repeated somewhere in the building most days. The same applies to everything else that walks in the door. A child separated from a parent, a medical emergency in the cereal aisle, a customer having the worst week of their life who has decided to have it at the customer service desk. The supermarket is one of the last genuinely public rooms in American life. No ticket, no appointment, no reason required to enter. And it gets the entire range of human behavior that comes with that, while trying to keep the music audible and the floors clean. And people arrive carrying more than a list. They shop while grieving, while newly diagnosed, while newly unemployed, while stretching the last $40 before payday, while feeding a family that has just gotten larger or just gotten smaller. Cashiers see a version of the country that almost nobody else sees from that angle. The cards that decline, the coupons organized with real care, the quiet arithmetic of it cannot make it affordable. And the register is where those two facts meet. Which brings us to the most recent transfer, and the first one that has visibly bounced back. Self-checkout is the same idea as 1916, applied to the last remaining employee in the transaction. The customer scans, bags, and pays. One worker supervises 6 stations instead of operating one, and the adoption has been enormous. A 2026 study out of the University of Leicester, commissioned by an industry loss prevention group, and drawing on data from 39 retailers with more than $1 trillion in combined annual turnover, found that 54% of transactions in stores equipped with self-checkout now go. Stores saw shrink rise by an average of 22% in the first year after installing self-checkout. and locations with it reported losses averaging around 33% higher than comparable stores without it. Some of that is deliberate. People who scan 15 items and put 20 in the bag. A great deal of it is not. Produce codes entered wrong, a heavy item left on the bottom of the cart, a barcode that did not take, and a beep the customer assumed they heard. The system asked untrained people to perform a job accurately, thousands of times a day, with no supervision and no consequence for getting it wrong, and then was surprised by the error rate. So the machines are coming back out. Dollar General removed self-checkout from something like 12,000 stores. Others are moving to camera systems and handheld scanning rather than abandoning the idea. The honest reading is not that customers turned out to be thieves. It is that the store had underpriced the work it removed. The cashier was never only ringing up groceries. She was also the accuracy check, the age verification, the theft deterrent, and the person who noticed that the code you entered for the mushrooms was the code for onions. Take out the position, and those functions do not disappear. They just stop being performed. There is one more thing the checkout produces besides a transaction, and it is the reason grocery prices occupy a place in American politics that the price of almost nothing else does. Most economic conditions reach people as abstractions. A drought in a growing region becomes the price of lettuce. An outbreak in poultry flocks becomes the price of eggs, and then becomes a national conversation about the price of eggs. Fuel costs enter nearly every item on the belt, because nearly every item was on a truck. A tariff becomes the price of a specific brand of olive oil. A labor shortage becomes a shorter deli counter. Policy becomes the rules printed on the back of a nutrition assistance card. Nobody has to understand any of the mechanisms. The total appears on a screen, and it is either what you expected or it is not. And households respond, fast and measurably. They move to store brands. They buy the smaller package or the much larger one. They shop 2 stores instead of 1. They drop a category entirely. The store watches all of this happen in its own data within about 3 weeks and adjusts. The value section grows. Private label gets more facings. Premium items lose space. Promotions get louder. The machine does not only sell food. It reads how the country is coping and rearranges itself accordingly, which puts the people at the registers in an unusual position. A cashier in a mid-sized American town sees the household economy at a resolution that no survey achieves. Not opinions about the cost of living, but the actual moment where somebody decides which 2 items go back. That is one of the few places in modern life where an abstraction about the economy becomes a specific person making a specific decision in front of a stranger. The Department of Agriculture maps this with a tool called the Food Access Research Atlas, and the methodology is worth knowing because the popular phrase gets used loosely. Researchers largely avoid saying food desert now. The technical measure is low income and low access, meaning a low-income census tract in which at least 500 people, or a third of the population, live more than half a mile from a supermarket in an urban area, or more than 10 miles in a rural one. Crucially, the atlas also tracks vehicle availability, because half a mile is nothing with a car and a serious logistical problem without one, especially carrying 4 bags with a child in August. Nationally, on the order of 2 million people live in low-income tracts more than 10 miles from the nearest supermarket, and several 100,000 are more. It is arithmetic. A store gets cited based on population density, household income, land cost, traffic counts, competition, parking, and distribution routes. Run those calculations honestly and repeatedly across a country, and they will produce a map with holes in it, without anyone ever deciding that a particular neighborhood deserves less. The machine follows the economics, and the economics leave a pattern, which is why a supermarket closing is a different kind of event from a clothing store closing. The neighborhood loses fresh food, but it also loses a pharmacy, a check cashing point, 40 or 80 jobs, a place where people run into each other, and an anchor that other businesses were leaning on. Inside a well-stocked store, this is invisible, because abundance always feels universal when you are standing in the middle of it. So go back through the doors one more time and watch what the calm is actually made of. The truck arrived at 4. Somebody counted it, checked temperatures, and caught the 2 cases that were short. Somebody trimmed the produce and pulled the items that would not survive being looked at. Somebody printed and hung 400 price tags for a promotion that starts today. Somebody stood in a cooler at 6 in the morning. Somebody forecast the chickens by the hour and got it roughly right. Somebody mopped up a jar of sauce while 2 shoppers stepped around them. Somebody at a corporate office decided 6 weeks ago how many turkeys this zip code would want. And what you see is a bright room where the things you need are where they were last week, at prices close enough to last week's that you do not have to think, in a building that will let you in without asking anything of you at all. You will put roughly 30 items in a wheeled basket invented by a man who noticed people stop shopping when their arms get tired. You will walk a path designed 110 years ago to take you past everything. You will scan your own groceries at a machine that exists because the store worked out you would do it for free. And you will leave with dinner. That is the arrangement, and on balance, it is a remarkable one. It fails in ways worth taking seriously. It wastes food to look full, but it also does something no previous civilization managed. It puts 30,000 things in one room, keeps almost all of them safe, and reopens tomorrow at 6 whether or not anyone was satisfied today. Tomorrow morning the dock door will roll up in the dark. Pallets will cross the floor. Bread will go in the ovens. Temperatures will be checked and written down. Tags will be changed. Expired product will be pulled and recorded. A cashier will count a drawer. Somebody will push a long train of carts in from the lot. And then the doors will slide open onto a room that looks like nothing ever happens in it. Bright, quiet, fully stocked, and completely calm. The world works because someone keeps it working, still running.